My name's Lyndon Trott, and I'm Guernsey's Chief Minister. Let me first make one thing quite clear. I've come here today to offer an apology to the Landsbanki Guernsey Depositors for my behaviour towards them over the last 2 years. Well over 2 years now. In October 2008 I took the responsibility upon myself, when Landsbanki Guernsey went into administration, to take charge, and by doing that failed to keep other deputies in the States Assembly up with the situation. I only told them as much as I wanted them to know, and at the time that amounted to making them think that I was working tirelessly behind the scenes in order to assist the Royal Court appointed administrators get the best possible results for the depositors. Of course I wasn't, but by saying that, we were regularly in touch with the UK Treasury, who had established that all depositors could get fair and equal treatment in the matter. It kept deputies off my back and made depositors feel Guernsey government were doing something. Unfortunately, the depositors didn't fall for my ploy and kept pestering me for updates, and so I had to give the occasional statement in the States Assembly to try to keep everybody happy. Phrases such as responsibility of the Royal Court administrators, in touch with the UK Treasury, and the Icelandic Finance Minister has given me his personal telephone number come to mind. In fact, I gave away nothing and actually never answered any questions. I thought I was clever, but now realise the depositors saw right through me. In January 2009, the promontory report into the way the GFSC had handled the situation came out. This had been instigated by the GFSC under their terms of reference and also paid for by them, and although I couldn't say it at the time, was probably the most self-serving report I've ever heard. But my job as Chief Minister is to distort the facts to the public, so as they think everything in the garden is smelling of roses. The Landsbanki Guernsey Depositors are the villains, not the GFSC, who undoubtedly failed in their due diligence in the run-up to the placing of Landsbanki Guernsey into administration. But what could I do? Make them look foolish, or just bluff my way through with a few convenient statements to our gullible States members? It was in November 2008 I was forced to meet a representative of the Landsbanki Guernsey Depositors, but as they had provided me with questions prior to the meeting, I got my civil servants to prepare the answers, which I read to the Landsbanki representatives. My chief executive was on one hand just in case I gave them too much information, but we bluffed our way through without giving any precise answers. This happened on 2 occasions, the second in January 2009, and that took a similar format. In February 2009, on a Radio Guernsey phone-in that I was listening to at home, I suddenly heard disparaging remarks from a Landsbanki depositor, and felt that I should phone in immediately. Being Chief Minister, I was immediately put online, and attempted to twist the facts enough to put doubt into what the depositor had been saying. And at the end of my statement I told Penny, the interviewer, that I would be happy to meet the depositors as a whole, not just a few, should I receive an invitation. Well, one arrived within a few days, but I was a bit frightened to face them all because of the misinformation I had been putting about, and I duly turned down the invitation. But they invited me at least twice more, and I had to come up with even more inventive excuses to avoid meeting them. You certainly are a persistent bunch. My one main ploy, which never failed, was the phrase, taxpayers' money. I knew that just the mention of that made the public think what a good bloke I was, standing against those nasty Landsbanki depositors in defence of taxpayers' money. I used it at every opportunity in the States Assembly, and no one really cross-questioned me. I have appeared before the UK Treasury Select Committee early in 2009, and was pushed by one of the Select Committee as to what the Guernsey government had done for the Landsbanki Guernsey depositors. I skilfully managed to give an answer that didn't relate to the question, but he persisted by saying, "Well, what have you done for the depositors?" I again gave an answer that bore no relevance to the question, and thought how clever I'd been. Little did I know what a fool I'd looked to intelligent observers. As 2009 progressed, the Landsbanki Depositors Action Group were becoming more persistent and asking what Guernsey government were doing. In fact, we were doing very little. The subject was brought up with the UK Treasury occasionally in amongst other matters, but they didn't appear too interested, even though they were meant to be representing Guernsey in Iceland. The pressure from the Landsbanki got too great, and around July 2009 I suddenly woke up and realised that the UK Treasury had been representing themselves to the detriment of Guernsey and the Landsbanki Depositors. What could I do to get myself out of this mess? I thought, go to Iceland. Early in August 2009 I headed for Iceland for 3 days, even though the UK Treasury had failed to send the introductory letter. It was a good trip. I met a number of people and had a few good social days. I didn't achieve much, but only myself and the Chief Executive knew that, so when I returned I issued a short press release. We dealt with the issues of fairness and equality in a robust but diplomatic way. All meetings were cordial and constructive, with understanding for the position of Guernsey as an island jurisdiction. This was totally over the top and said nothing. We then decided the government could not respond to any more depositors' requests for information. It had become obvious to us that we had been used by the UK Treasury and had nowhere to turn, and no constructive information to impart. We'd better keep our mouths shut. Although there was pressure all the time from the depositors, I managed to hold off for the next year, even though the reports from the Justice Select Committee showed clearly that the UK Treasury had done nothing and there was a breakdown in communication, and that all the time I'd been feeding exaggerated information to the Landsbanki Guernsey Depositors, the Guernsey public and the States Assembly. Pressure again mounted on the anniversary of the last update I'd given from my visit to Iceland. Depositors said a year had passed and Guernsey's government had failed to update depositors on their political progress. I felt under pressure again, and then deputies submitted questions in the States, pressing me for a number of answers. Of course, the November States meeting came along and Deputy Lyle made his address, and I bit the hook, line and sinker, standing and addressing the States with my foot in my mouth, saying informed commentators say that Landsbanki Guernsey depositors may get back greater than 100%. I didn't only do it once, I did it twice, knowing full well about the administrators' figures in their latest report of only a return of 85 to 91%. I totally misled the States deliberately and couldn't help myself. Then the administrators shoot me down in flames by issuing a rebuttal on their website about speculative comments in the States debate. The Landsbanki depositors immediately jump on it and email all deputies, and I make it worse by replying to their email. But I've been told to refuse to reply to the questions they have asked me as to why I used speculation when the administrators' figures were well known to me. To mislead the States, of course, any fool would know that. Well, that just about covers where I stand as Chief Minister, and how we've treated the depositors over the last couple of years. We will continue to see how badly we can treat them in the years to come, and I have no doubt I will continue to mislead the States Assembly, and they will continue for the utmost part to accept it. Have a happy Christmas.